In a recent podcast episode, Colonel Daniel Davis discussed the complex geopolitical landscape surrounding the ongoing war in Ukraine, the implications of U.S. military support, and the troubling reality that American weapons are reportedly being sold to Mexican drug cartels. The conversation delved into the historical context of the conflict, the failures of U.S. foreign policy, and the potential paths forward for the incoming administration. Colonel Davis began by outlining the historical backdrop of the Ukraine-Russia conflict, emphasizing that the war could have been avoided had previous agreements, such as the Minsk agreements, been implemented. He pointed out that key Western leaders, including Angela Merkel and François Hollande, admitted that they never intended to fully implement these agreements, which aimed to provide autonomy to Russian-speaking populations in eastern Ukraine. This failure to adhere to the agreements set the stage for the current conflict, which has resulted in significant loss of life and destabilization in the region. Davis highlighted that the U.S. has played a pivotal role in escalating tensions, particularly through its support for Ukraine and its refusal to acknowledge Russia's security concerns regarding NATO expansion. He argued that the Biden administration's approach has only served to strengthen Russia while weakening Ukraine and the U.S. itself. As the war continues, Davis expressed concern over the staggering human cost, estimating that around 1 million Ukrainians have died or been wounded. He criticized the U.S. for its lack of accountability and transparency regarding the military aid sent to Ukraine, noting that a significant portion of these weapons is reportedly being sold on the black market, including to drug cartels in Mexico. This alarming development raises questions about the effectiveness of U.S. oversight and the potential consequences for American security. Davis pointed out that the Ukrainian military, while valiant, lacks the experience and resources to sustain a prolonged conflict against a well-prepared Russian military. He argued that the U.S. military leadership has failed to recognize the realities on the ground, leading to misguided strategies that have resulted in unnecessary casualties and a protracted war. The conversation shifted to the U.S. military's readiness and the challenges it faces in adapting to modern warfare. Davis criticized the current leadership for being disconnected from the realities of combat and for perpetuating outdated strategies. He emphasized the need for a reevaluation of military priorities, particularly in light of advancements in drone technology and other modern warfare tactics that have emerged during the Ukraine conflict. Davis expressed concern that the U.S. military is not adequately prepared to face a peer adversary like Russia, citing the lessons learned from the ongoing war. He argued that the military must adapt to new technologies and strategies to remain effective, warning that failure to do so could lead to disastrous consequences in future conflicts. Looking ahead to the incoming administration, Davis outlined the significant challenges that await. He urged President Trump to prioritize ending the war in Ukraine and to negotiate a settlement that acknowledges the current realities on the ground. He suggested that the June 15th line, proposed by Russia, could serve as a basis for negotiations, emphasizing the need for a pragmatic approach that prioritizes American interests and the well-being of the Ukrainian people. Davis also highlighted the importance of rebuilding relations with Russia, arguing that a cooperative approach could benefit both nations. He expressed hope that the new national security team, including figures like Tulsi Gabbard and Pete Hegseth, would focus on revitalizing U.S. military readiness and addressing the failures of past administrations. Throughout the discussion, Davis underscored the moral and strategic implications of U.S. support for Ukraine. He criticized the narrative that frames the conflict as a simple battle between good and evil, arguing that the reality is far more complex. He pointed out that the U.S. has a responsibility to ensure that its military aid does not contribute to further violence or instability, particularly when it comes to the potential for American weapons to end up in the hands of drug cartels. Davis called for greater accountability and oversight regarding military aid, emphasizing that the U.S. must prioritize its own security interests while also considering the humanitarian impact of its actions. He expressed concern that the current trajectory of U.S. foreign policy could lead to long-term consequences that undermine American security and global stability.